Garrett Whitlock and Tanner Houck are both options that the Red Sox could use either as starters or in the bullpen, but where will they play? More on today's Locked On Red Sox.
You are Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Gabby, former ESPN social media associate and also currently the host of the Boston Balling podcast. And I'm here every day to bring you the latest in all things Boston Red Sox, whether that's a lot of things or not many things at all. And this offseason has been very, very slow, but I'm still here to bring you new episodes for free wherever you listen to podcasts. So since it's free, you might as well check it out, right? Just start your day off right with Locked On Red Sox. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that later on in the show, but that is such a great deal for you. Welcome to another episode of Locked On Red Sox, and we are one day closer to opening day. I mean, whether you're excited about that or not, I think we have a little bit of mixed feelings going on here among this fan base about whether we are excited about opening day or how we're really feeling. But for me, it's been enjoyable just to at least watch some spring training, get baseball back on my TV, and make me feel like I'm closer to at least the warm weather, which is always a positive here in New England. But hope you're having a great start to your day. I actually have a special guest with me on today's show, and some of you everydayers will be very excited about this because I know back when I asked on Twitter what guests you'd like to see on the show, he was actually brought up in the comments. Nick Cattles, legend in the Boston sports community, hosts the Nick Cattles Show, which, by the way, you should check out if you haven't already. Talking all things Boston sports, just really has worked his way through a lot of different media opportunities within Boston sports. So how are you doing today, Nick?
I'm doing good, Gabby. I'm doing good, and I appreciate you having me on here to talk a little bit of Red Sox. I've been so focused on the Patriots on my podcast because it's nonstop news with those guys. It's good to dip the toe in the Red Sox stuff today with you.
Yeah, I'm so happy to have you. And I know, you also came on my other show back, a few months back to talk about basically all Boston sports. So it's definitely good to be able to focus on Red Sox here and kind of get your thoughts on some of these things that have happened this offseason or lack thereof. One of the biggest things, though, that I think is a big storyline going into the season is the starting rotation. What is that going to look like? Who really is going to be the fifth starter in the rotation? Because they haven't really finalized that yet. They have four starters that they're pretty certain about that will be in that rotation. But that fifth spot could really go to a mix of a few different guys: Tanner Houck, Garrett Whitlock, Josh Winkowski. Garrett Whitlock actually had a very nice outing against the Tigers, pitching 3 innings, giving up 1 earned run, but striking out 6, which is huge if they want to make him into a starter. So what are your thoughts on Garrett Whitlock? Is he somebody who you've seen kind of be better off in the bullpen, or do you think he has potential to be in the starting rotation?
Well, I like him to stay healthy. He's added some weight and he's added some bulk, which is a good thing. I think that's smart business by him. And he's been trying to slowly build himself up, obviously, during the offseason to be in a spot to be the fifth guy. Houck, to me, is more of the 1 inning, 2 inning bullpen cat to me, in my eyes. I might end up being wrong, but I think Houck kind of brings that part of the pitching staff a little bit more together. I wouldn't mind seeing Whitlock, extend and see if he can give you 5-6 innings, every 5 days, 6 days. It does look like, Gabby, that the rotation is going to be Giolito, and then you've got Pivetta, and then you've got Bayo. And I know that, Alex Cora said Cutter Crawford has the leg up, and it certainly looks like he's going to be a 4 guy. But, I did find it interesting that the way they're setting this up, it looks like Giolito could be your 1, Pivetta can be your 2, and Bayo can be your 3. Little surprised that Bayo is not the 2, but, Pivetta looked really good at the end of last year. They feel great about him. So I guess that makes sense. But, Whitlock and Houck, I don't know what to expect from either guy. Again, I would lean towards Whitlock, but you could easily debate that Houck should get it over Whitlock. They're very similar in very similar situations. They've had inconsistencies throughout their career. So just hopefully one of those two guys shows up, unless they go a different route and the never-ending Jordan Montgomery conversation finally concludes with him coming to Boston.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely, hopefully a possibility in their minds. He's somebody who no doubt would make the rotation better. I don't think anybody could argue that. But my thing about Tanner Houck right now is he still has trouble pitching deeper into games. He has a trouble when he faces a lineup for the third time. The first couple of times through, he's absolute nails, hard to hit, just completely getting the job done and just looking dominant and confident out there. But then he starts to lose some of that when he sees the lineup the third time. And I wonder, why that is. And that's something that he still has yet to improve on, that I'd like to see him improve on if I feel confident with him being in the rotation, because the Red Sox rotation last year just had a lot of trouble in general with pitching deep into games. And we really need starters who are going to give them innings this year.
Yeah, I mean, that's the argument, right? The argument for Jordan Montgomery is, I don't know if anybody is saying he's a number 1, even though, when he ended up in Texas last year, he pitched like a number 1 down the stretch. He was fantastic in the postseason. He looked like a number 1 in those big games, but I don't think you would bring Montgomery in thinking that he's your ace, quote unquote. He's more of a 2, right? A 2B maybe, but it's the idea of giving you innings, Gabby. And you hit the nail on the head with Tanner Houck, which is why I said it feels to me like he's better in the bullpen and he's a better piece altogether for this team when you put him in that spot versus the 5 spot. And what's difficult is when you have a situation, as you said, with Houck, who's been incapable to consistently get guys out the third time around, it's very difficult to prove that you can do otherwise in spring training, right? I mean, you're not going to sit there and go 7 innings deep, game in and game out. You've got to build yourself up. You're building your stamina now. So if that's the biggest question about Houck, I don't know if you can have that answer during a spring training. So do you kind of wish and hope that he figures it out and you put him in the starting rotation, or do you go with Whitlock and see how that goes first?
Yeah, they're definitely doing a lot of wishing and hoping in terms of this team in general going into 2024. I think there's a lot of optimism among the front office that there's going to be guys who step up this year that maybe the fan base isn't thinking might step up in 2024. So I think they, as an organization and front office, are a lot more confident in some of these guys as a whole, which, there's definitely some young talent on this team, but it's hard to really know for sure who's going to develop the way you want them to and who's not. And my thing with Garrett Whitlock is he needs to get his innings up, like you said. I mean, if they want him to be in the rotation, they need to start piling more of a workload on him now. And obviously during the spring training portion, of the season, they're not putting guys into a lot of situations where they're pitching deep into games, which is understandable because you don't want guys to tire out their arm before the season starts or risk getting injury. So I do get that, but I think with Whitlock, they need to try to stretch him out where they can if they feel confident that he can be a piece in the rotation, because I'm still not fully sold on him being a solid piece in the rotation, because I just don't think we've been able to see enough of him in the rotation when he's been healthy, which you also mentioned, to feel confident that he can be a consistent every 5th day guy that'll give you solid stuff that they need.
Yeah, I mean, look, we've seen the flashes from him. We've seen the flashes from both guys. We've seen Whitlock give you 3-4 solid innings, out of the bully, especially his first season with the Red Sox. Guy was ridiculous, giving you 2-3 innings at a time and just being absolutely nails. But we haven't seen it from either guy consistently. The question about Whitlock, as you said, you can question the innings, you can question the health, you can question his body type. Is he going to be able to get through a full season? Can he be that 5th guy for you? And then Houck, you did see the velocity dip a little bit last year, which, was that an injury? Was that an issue with mechanics? Is that going to be a problem again this season? Is he able to sustain that velocity as he goes through the year? Because if he is able to get through the lineup for a third time, well, now you're talking more innings being stockpiled. Can his arm handle that? Can his shoulder handle that? How does he look, midway when you get to the All-Star break? If he's pitching every fifth day and he is giving you the innings that you need, let's say 5 to 6 innings a night, how does he look during the middle of the season, latter stages of the season? Because he's never really done it before for this team. So is he able to give you those innings, and are they quality innings as you get into, July, August? What's he look like at that point? So I think there's still question marks. I don't think, Gabby, that we're going to be able to find these answers, frankly, until we start this season, which is difficult for Alex Cora. Like you said, it's a balancing act, right? You can't push these guys too fast because they'll get hurt. You don't want to screw up the apple cart. So you got to give them time to build up. But in the meantime, you're trying to figure it out. And I think if you shot Alex Cora with truth serum and you said, hey, Alex, would you rather have to make this decision between Houck and Whitlock with the information you're going to have by the end of spring training, or do you want to bring in somebody like Jordan Montgomery? I don't think Blake Snell's coming because of the whole qualifying offer deal. But, or would you rather have Montgomery? I think Cora would scream from the mountaintops, give me Montgomery, give me the known, quality pitcher that I know can give me 6 or 7 innings, and I'll deal with the shuffling of the bully with those 2 other guys.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it already, the question marks. I think there's a lot of question marks in this pitching staff right now in general. I mean, even Lucas Giolito, he's a guy who had a very rough second half of the season last year, and obviously there were a lot of off-field factors for him that were helping to cause that. And I really like the Red Sox bringing in Andrew Bailey this offseason. I think he's going to be great for this pitching staff. Very well-desired guy for a lot of organizations during this offseason. So I saw that as a win for the Red Sox. He's somebody who I feel like can hopefully get Giolito back to some level of what we are used to seeing from him prior to all of these circumstances that happened for him. But there's no guarantee. I mean, he's another one to me that we're really going to need to step up in that top half of that rotation as a defined 1 or 2 guy if the Red Sox are going to feel like they're kind of getting back into a place of wanting to be competitive. Is can he kind of get back to what he was prior to all of that taking place? Because we still really don't know for sure if that's the case.
Yeah, I mean, the guy had Cy Young potential, right? I mean, he has the stuff. He's mid-high 90s with the fastball. He's got a great changeup. He's got the stuff. There's no denying that, or at least he's had the stuff. And, when you look at the second half of last season, I think you hit on it, the divorce, the personal issues, how much did that play a role in everything? And he's come out and been very upfront and honest about it. And he thinks that did affect him. And look, I will never pass judgment on somebody who's having family issues and personal issues away from the field or the rink or the court. I'm just not going to do that. Everybody handles those things differently, and every story is different. We don't know the specifics behind the divorce and everything that happened, right? So I think you look at it and you hope that now that he's in a better place mentally, according to him, that will show itself on the field. But I think the bigger part is what you brought up, this idea of Andrew Bailey trying to, really help this staff grow, develop, and get the most out of these guys. And really, you can say that, Gabby, about this entire organization, that they have been honed in. Look, you and I could talk about, justifiably so, what they haven't done this offseason. I think it's been an absolute joke the way they've approached this offseason, right? We can argue about that, or we could agree on that, and we can just absolutely, rip them from pillar to post about this offseason on the field. However, off the field, they have made it a concerted effort to put as much resources as they could into pitching development. And it started with Breslow, then it was Bailey, and a number of the other guys that they have brought in from different organizations, whether it be Minnesota or elsewhere, to really, let's be honest, restructure this entire organization when it comes to pitching. We're talking lower levels. We're talking mid, high. We're talking every single level of this franchise has been underdeveloped as far as pitching goes. And this will bear it out, right? I mean, you've got guys like Giolito. Is Bailey able to get him back to where he wants to be? Does Bayo take that next step in his progression and look like the guy who can be the front of the rotation starter that we hope that he can be? Can Pivetta continue that role that he got on in the second half of last year? What do you get from Whitlock and Houck, the guys we've been talking about? And then you look at the pen. The Isaiah Campbell's a very interesting guy that you got via trade in the offseason. He's got some good stuff. what are you gonna do with him? There's been talk about him maybe having a sinker, throwing a sinker a little bit more during spring training. So they're obviously working with things, regarding Campbell's stuff and his secondary stuff. But I mean, you can look up and down, right? Justin Slayton's looked pretty good. He's another guy that made you feel like you could make a move like you made with trading Schreiber to Kansas City. So there's going to be a lot of development. But I think at this point, you've got to trust that they have the right people in place to work with this staff across the board at all levels. And we start seeing those results within hopefully the first few months of this season.
Yeah, that's absolutely what I'm hoping. And I think there's a lot of potential there. I mean, Bayo and Crawford both showed a ton of potential in 2023. And I feel like they're two guys who, if they have the right person working with them and can really hone in on their mechanics, they could be guys in the future that could really excel in this rotation. I mean, Bayo to me eventually could be an ace. I think he's heading in the right direction to be that. He's definitely obviously not there yet, but I think with the work and the right person there, which hopefully is Andrew Bailey, he could eventually get to that point where he could be a longer term ace for this team. Because like you mentioned before, the outlook of this offseason overall in terms of the team itself and guys they're bringing in seems to be focused very much on the future. Who's going to be a contributor moving forward for us down the road, because they know they have this talent in the farm system. So who can we bring in that can help enhance that, as opposed to focusing on being competitive right now? Because it's become pretty clear that they are not really focused on being super competitive in 2024.
And look, maybe that changes. Maybe we hope against hope the idea that, Duvall is still out there. Montgomery is still out there. A week from now, we could be talking about, hey, man, Craig Breslow and the Red Sox, they ended up playing it perfect by waiting. Now, I don't think that's the truth. I think the truth is they don't want to spend the money, as we've learned through various reports. But, don't get it twisted. If Jordan Montgomery finds a way to be on this rotation, in this staff, and we get to mid to late April and he's, the number one starter for this baseball team, there is going to be a picture that's painted from some of the Red Sox organization saying, we played it just perfect. Scott Boras wanted all this money, but we waited Boras out and we won. But it's interesting, Gabby, because, how do you handle the other parts of this team and the other parts of this rotation and the other parts of this staff? And what I mean by that is, we've also heard about Kenley Jansen. He's been on the block. He's got that lat issue. If it is an issue, I guess I'll take his word for it. But, there's been talk about maybe trading him. There's been talk about maybe trading Chris Martin. I don't know if the end was Schreiber going to Kansas City. So if you do pull the trigger and you do trade a Kenley Jansen, I know there's been some talk about pretty much, closer by committee and not believing in one guy having to do the job. I've got Theo Epstein, closer by committee PTSD from a long time ago. I just hate that idea. But if you do move on from Jansen and or Martin, there's a trickle-down effect, right? So now, is it Slayton who gets those late innings? Is it Winkowski that gets those late innings? Does Campbell become that guy? And everything affects everything else. And then do you look at Houck and Whitlock and say, well, maybe they're the best option to move into the late innings or be the setup guy? So I think there's a lot of shuffling, and it seems to me that they want some fluidity and some options as they get into this season where, hey, look, if it doesn't work out with Houck and Whitlock at the end of the rotation, then we'll just slide those guys into the bullpen, and then maybe we could do, something else with the five, or at least one of those guys will be moved to the bully and we'll keep the other at the five. And if that's not working out, hopefully we're able to develop some of the guys that we brought into the system via trade this offseason, so they might be able to be a five. So I think it's TBD a lot as far as, the end of this rotation and how this bullpen might look in a few weeks. I will say I'm confident in Bayo as long as he figures out the day-night thing, which is still weird. But I'm confident in Bayo, and I think Pivetta gave you some confidence and optimism at the end of last year. And if Giolito can turn things around and look like, the prior Giolito to the issues off the field with the family stuff, at least you got 3 solid guys. Yeah, I don't know if you have anybody who's going to turn the lights out night in and night out when you talk about even Bayo, but at least you got a pretty good 3. And as you mentioned, Cutter Crawford, the stuff's not necessarily great. He doesn't have electric stuff, but he pitches. He's the old school, pitcher's pitcher. That's what he is. And if he can give you 5 or 6 innings in the 4 slot, then you could look at this rotation and say, well, hopefully they have some things figured out.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping. And obviously, the question becomes, do the Red Sox want the sure thing in any of these scenarios, or do they want to just kind of hope for the best with guys that they have? And coming up, we're going to be talking a little bit about some of those free agent options. Are they viable options for Boston? But I did promise that I would tell you a little bit more about FanDuel, as it really is fantastic if you're looking to make a lot of money. And my fiance is somebody who can firsthand attest to this, because he's grown so addicted to this FanDuel over the last couple months, really making a lot of different bets on a lot of different sports. And he's had a lot of success. And if you're looking for a way to win a lot of money betting on different sports, FanDuel absolutely has you covered. All you have to do is go to FanDuel.com/lockedon, and you get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. So that's pretty cool, right? It's pretty simple. Just make sure you're using that code LOCKEDON, and you can win a lot of money, because I've seen people get so frustrated over the sports betting thing, and FanDuel is very forgiving. So head to there today and start winning money now. Why not do it? And also, you should check out Locked On Sports Today, which is available on YouTube and also Amazon Fire TV, as we have launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. So if you ever need to get caught up in everything going on in sports, no matter what time of day it is, it's a 24/7 stream with all of our Locked On hosts keeping you updated on everything going on in sports. So head to Locked On Sports Today. You can either subscribe on YouTube or search for it on Amazon Fire TV. So that's pretty cool for us as a network as well. We were talking here on the show about, the Red Sox offseason not really being what people were expecting based on, comments earlier before the offseason started about going full throttle this year, and that clearly just meant something different to them than it did to us. And now we're coming to the realization, it seems, that the Red Sox are not focused as much on being as competitive in 2024, and they want to make moves that make sense for them for the future. But we have mentioned a couple free agents here, like Jordan Montgomery, Blake Snell, Adam Duvall, guys who could make sense for Boston, but they might not necessarily pull the trigger on some of those guys. I did see a report the other day that Blake Snell is willing to kind of adjust what he's looking for. That probably is because he is unsigned still, and we're getting deeper and deeper into spring training. Do the Red Sox try to now make a move for him? I still don't think the chances are high, because they said they didn't want somebody that has that whole qualifying offer situation that he has. They just wanted to stay away from that. So do you think that Blake Snell is a feasible option for Boston?
I don't think Snell's going to be the guy, because you just mentioned it, the QO, as they say on the streets, right? The QO. I don't think he's going to be the option because of that. They don't want to give up the pick. They'd have to give up and all those things. So, look, this is a Scott Boras situation, right? I mean, Bellinger, Montgomery, Snell, all these guys that have not gotten jobs yet. Bellinger just obviously went to the Cubs on a deal that was much lower than I think he anticipated. And you're right, Gabby. Blake Snell, I love the story of Blake Snell is willing to maybe take a little bit less or sign a shorter term deal. Yeah, because Blake Snell doesn't have a job. It's because Blake Snell now understands he's not getting what he wanted. If he was going to be able to get what he wanted, then he wouldn't be willing to take less. So you're willing to take less as you go through February. I mean, it's truly crazy to me that we are, one day away as we record this. Tomorrow's March 1st. And you have several names out there that haven't signed deals. At some point, you got to poop or get off the pot. And I think, for Boris, it's been somewhat of a stare down with these teams and these executives. And frankly, Boris is losing this offseason. He's losing. You don't push your free agents to March 1st if you're winning. You're winning when you get those big deals signed, sealed, and delivered, and you move on to next year. Like, Boris should be looking at extensions for his young players if they want them. He should be looking at next season already, and he's still stuck with a handful of guys that should absolutely be signed already. So as far as Montgomery, I don't know how you feel, Gabby. I know we talk about the money thing, and we talk about the CBT, and, how many years have we been waiting for the Red Sox to spend the money that they used to spend? And we're talking, we're not even talking about like the inflation numbers. We're just talking about, even if they spent what they used to spend a few years ago, we'd be happy. They are tens of millions of dollars under the tax. They don't have to worry about that. When they traded Mookie Betts, they sold us on this idea that they were going to reset things. Yeah. We're now 4 years moving, and we're still resetting.
Yeah, how long is the resetting going to take?
It's the longest reset in the history of resets. And now we're sitting here. Montgomery is there. He's there. You feel like, and we know that, he's been in the area. His wife goes to school in the area. He's been working out in the area. They had a Zoom call a couple of weeks ago with this guy. And it just drives me crazy that they have tens of millions of dollars under the tax that they can spend. They have a pitcher that right now is going to be able to help you. And it's not like you're giving up assets. You're just giving up money. And when you get to next year, you even have less on the books. Like, what is the point? Why are you waiting? It seems like you have a solution that could help everybody on this team. You've got, Dustin Pedroia FaceTiming. You've got Rafael Devers calling out ownership in front of the entire media, and you've got somebody who can help. And it's like, you know what? Maybe if you want like $10 million for a year, we might look at you, Jordan. To me, it's nuts.
Yeah, and I mean, I thought that the Dustin Pedroia thing was going to cause them to wake up and actually sign somebody, because he was like, look, there are so many talented free agents still on the board here. You should sign one of them. And the fact that there's multiple people who have brought this up and they haven't really budged is definitely a concern. I think when it comes to the Red Sox ownership group in general, they're trying to do things efficiently without spending money. Like, they just don't want to do it, it seems like. And obviously, they gave Devers that big contract, but how do you give Devers that big contract and not give him the best pieces around him on the team to be able to succeed while he's there? Because obviously his hope by signing this big contract is that the team is winning. And obviously him being blatantly frustrated with how the offseason has gone isn't a great sign for somebody who does have opt-outs in that contract and has the option to, walk away if things are not going the way that he wants them to go. So if I'm the Red Sox and you want Devers to be the franchise player, you're doing what you can to reassure him that you care about him being there and you value his presence. And that means, setting him up with a team that he can win with.
Yeah, I mean, he can't be excited. He obviously admitted that he's not excited when he sat in front of the media.
Which is sad.
Yeah, I mean, right there in plain sight, he's just calling people out. And, the interpreter apparently was pretty nice because he didn't say everything that Rafael said. Apparently, Rafi went a little bit deeper for a cut as far as John Henry and some of the things that haven't been done. And the interpreter cleaned it up a little bit for Devers. But yeah, Rafi's got to be very frustrated. And it just, it feels like, Gabby, and I'm not even sure if it feels like versus it just is. They dragged their feet with Mookie, and they dealt him for a bag of baseballs because they dragged their feet for so long. They dragged their feet with Bogarts, which led Bogarts to free agency. And look, the San Diego deal stinks, right? Yeah. I mean, he's already been moved to second base. But the argument is not whether or not that deal last offseason was outrageous. The argument is they should have had a deal well before then with Bogey. He wanted to stay here. He was willing to sign somewhat of a team-friendly contract, but they dragged their feet. And it seems like the Rafi contract was to quiet the masses. that, okay, we got killed for Mookie. We just lost Bogey. Let's do something. Let's give Rafi this big contract extension, and that'll keep people quiet for a little while. And if that was the case, it's awful because, again, you look at the total numbers, this team has more than enough money to spend. And just off of NESN, they're making revenue off of NESN. Baseball is struggling across these regional sports networks and trying to cut deals on the side because they can't get their games on television. And the Red Sox are making money off of NESN right now. They're making, a profit of millions of dollars. So I get it. Red Sox fans, the frustration, not wanting to go to games, telling ownership, prove it before we actually start paying our money. I think we're at the point where that's how fans should feel.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just been such a time of people having hope, and then that hope goes down, and then they have hope again because they hear some things like the Red Sox are interested in this player or they're talking to this player, and then there's no action actually taken to get that player, and it just gets disappointing. I mean, we hear so many things like, oh, the Red Sox really tried. Like, they really tried to get this player, but did they really, though? Because the Boston Red Sox used to be such a desirable location for players, and I even read something today that said Jordan Montgomery might not even end up wanting to pick Boston because he might want to pick somewhere that's in a, better situation to win right now. And I honestly wouldn't blame him if that's the case. I mean, he's coming off of a World Series year where he was a huge contributor in that World Series run. And if I'm him, I wouldn't really want to commit to being on a team that is, I guess, rebuilding, if that's what they're going to call whatever this whole thing is. I would want to go to a team where I feel like my team can contend and be a team that has a chance to go to the World Series. So that's another thing I think the Red Sox have that's going to be tough for them right now is what incentive do some of these free agents like a Blake Snell, like a Jordan Montgomery have to come to Boston when they've seen that the Red Sox have finished in last place in their division 3 out of the last 4 years. And last year they win 78 games, and this is what their offseason looks like to respond to that. It's just a hard sell to bring a player like that to Boston right now, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah, what it would take is it would take you spending a lot of money. Look, I'm sure Jordan Montgomery would run to Fenway Park if they gave him $30 million annually. I think he'd be fine with that kind of a contract, right? But the idea that the Red Sox are so in this mode of pinching pennies, and we've got to trade salary out to take salary in, which is just bananas. We're living in a banana world with that kind of idea, right? But that's where we're at, and so I can't imagine the Red Sox are going to all of a sudden come over the top and pay Jordan Montgomery not only a good amount of money, but that much more money to win him over versus another team if they're interested and willing to give that guy money. And you're right. Look, they're the interest kings. We've all made jokes, right? They're the interest kings. That's Teoscar Hernandez goes on a podcast a couple of weeks ago and says to everybody, I wanted to be a Red Sox. Fenway is my favorite place to play. I wanted to play in Boston. And
I wanted him too.
And they wouldn't offer him more than 2 years. The contract offer was a joke. So you lost Teoscar Hernandez, right? We heard about Soler. Soler was talked about for weeks and weeks and weeks, and then he goes on a manageable contract. And this is a team, we get so wrapped up in the rotation. This is a team that needs right-handed power. And you could sit there and try to feel good about O'Neill, say, oh, well, maybe, just maybe, Tyler O'Neill will find that guy from a couple of years ago that hit, 34 dongs or whatever it was.
He's injury prone too, though.
Yeah, I mean, I know he's got 3% body fat, but could he stay on the field? I mean, great. He's all pumped and jacked. I don't need him wrestling at WrestleMania. I need him to be a baseball player for 162. So, is O'Neill going to – and even if O'Neill fills in the power of that you lost with Duvall, you still lost Turner. So, yep. And maybe you can make up some of that with Trevor Story being back. But, is Trevor Story going to be able to give you a full season with his health history? Vaughn Grissom's a big unknown at second base. Now, do I like the idea of Grissom? Yes. Do I like the way he looks? Yes. I mean, it's like watching the combine right now. These guys, I'm sure they look great in T-shirts and shorts, but, can Grissom give you 150 games? And can he hit 25 home runs? So none of these are knowns. And you've got Duvall out there who could be re-signed, who did a great job for you last year. Turner went to the Blue Jays on peanuts, and he wanted to be back. So it's very frustrating when you look at rotation needs help, and you didn't really do anything to do. I mean, you traded Chris Sale, and you brought in Giolito. Okay, great, 1 for 1. You didn't do anything beyond that, right? And then you look at the right-handed power question, and Duvall's still out there, and Turner goes to Toronto, and you got somebody like Hernandez saying, I would have loved to be there, and you're not willing to give him a 3-year deal. It's just, I am glad that at least Sam Kennedy finally, during all of these mixed messages that he has sent out, this whole ownership group, the idea of, full throttle, and then we don't have any, limits on spending. And then, I didn't mean full throttle as in you took full throttle. And then Sam Kennedy coming out saying, yes, we do have parameters. I mean, above and beyond everything, they have been incapable of getting their message to the fans. The message has not been clear. Are you spending money? Are you not spending money? And finally, Kennedy goes out there and admits, there's parameters. And good that he said that, because now at least Craig Breslow has some coverage out there, because, his tuchus is hanging out in the cold while everybody's wondering what's going on. So, yeah, it's not good, Gabby. It's not good.
No, it's really not. And I think that's where a lot of frustration comes for the fans is, what exactly are you trying to do right now? Because you've sent so many mixed signals. If they had been transparent to begin with and said, look, we're trying to grow this team for the future. We're trying to put pieces in place that can help us sustain a winning culture down the road. We just don't see 2024 being that year where we're doing that. Then that would have lowered people's expectations significantly for how this offseason was going to go. But you can't go out and say that you're going to make all these big moves this offseason and then it doesn't happen, and then be confused as to why people are frustrated about it. Because to me, that's just like, you're telling us one thing and doing another. Like, it's understandable that people are going to get frustrated by that.
And here's the thing. Look, I'm not even telling you that, the plan of developing and growing your own talent and signing, extending those guys and all. I'm not telling you that's a bad idea. I mean, in a perfect world, if Teal and Meyer and all of these guys work out, right? So now, if all of these guys work out for you and you sign them to long-term deals, and in 2 years from now, you have a young, awesome core that is signed for the next 7, 8, 9 years, then okay, that vision makes sense, right? But the problem is that you've been, trying to go through the mud of the last 4 years. And the problem is that you finished in last place in 3 out of the last 4. And, look, the hocus pocus run from a couple of years ago, fantastic, lightning in a bottle. But 3 of the last 4 years, you're in last place. And this year, everybody's banking on you finishing in last again. Is that what's going to happen? We don't know. That's why they play the games, as they say, right? But, even if this plan works out, and in 2026, the Red Sox are an exciting team that could win 90 games, 95 games, well, you can't dismiss the 6 or 7 years of crap that you had to go through to get there. And that, to me, is inexcusable for an organization like the Red Sox that have the money, that have this market, that have this fan base, that have Nesson. They're in a situation where they can do both. You can develop young talent in the minors, and you can sign free agents to make this team competitive right now in the 2024 vacuum.
Exactly. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, I have no problem with developing internally. I think that's important, is to, have your guys who are going to be part of the future, and you're investing in them and you're developing their talent so they can be part of, what you're trying to do later on, kind of like the Tampa Bay Rays try to do. But you're not them. You're not the Tampa Bay Rays. You have the money this offseason to be able to bring in more of the sure thing now. And I feel badly for Cora, because he's in a tough spot with this roster. And even last year, I think he took a lot of heat for things that he shouldn't have taken heat for. And, I've been pretty open on the show about, how he didn't have a lot to work with last year. And when the starters couldn't go deeper into games, then the bullpen was being overworked, and he had to put guys in when they wouldn't normally be put in. So he was in a tough spot last year. I think he's going to be in a tough spot again this year. I don't blame him if he's frustrated about where the roster is at right now, but they just should have done more, and they had the capability to do more. It's just concerning that they just seem unwilling to spend money on anybody really right now.
When you look at the big picture, and, Breslow admitted this last week or a week and a half, whatever it was, all time kind of blends together nowadays. But even Breslow came out and said, I'm paraphrasing, but yeah, this isn't what we expected. So at least he's being honest. They thought this offseason was going to bear a lot better fruit than it did. Because, Gabby, when you look at this team, tell me where they improved. Tell me where they upgraded. Tell me what's better now when we looked at the questions of this team. You might be able to argue bullpen because, Schreiber, you might have sold him high. And again, I mentioned, Campbell and Slayton and some of the other guys. Like, okay, so maybe the bullpen's better, right? Martin was fantastic last year. You would expect Kenley to be fine. So maybe the bullpen's a little bit better. But you needed right-handed power going into the offseason. You didn't get it as of yet, right? The defense was awful last year. Well, maybe you'll get an uptick with Story. Devers is still a question at third. Casas is still a question at first. Grissom, depending on which scouting report you read, he might not be necessarily strong at second. Yes, you removed the Yoshida problem in left with O'Neill, but O'Neill's got the injury history that we talked about. Can you play Abreu in right field at Fenway? I don't know. I don't feel spectacular about that. So, you've now pushed Yoshida to DH. So, like, we talked about the rotation ad nauseum on this episode. So, I mean, you go into every offseason in every sport with, like, your list of priorities and what you need to upgrade. And it's like they haven't really addressed any of them. I mean, again, maybe outfield defense, okay, because Yoshida was, so mediocre to bad last year. But other than that, it's really a struggle to find a place where you can say, oh, they absolutely upgraded, aside from maybe the bully.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I'm having a hard time saying that they'll be much above a 500 team this year, if at all, really. And that's why coming up, I'm going to have Nick give a quick prediction on what he thinks the Red Sox record will be in 2024, because there's definitely been mixed feelings on that. But don't forget, you can check out Locked On Red Sox wherever you get your favorite podcasts for free, which is the best part of it. Just subscribe to Locked On Red Sox, share it with your family and friends who are also Red Sox fans. I promise you, whatever emotion you're feeling about this team, I am as well. So whatever emotional roller coaster this team decides to bring us on this season, I will be there with you. So feel free to join me as we may see some frustration going on this season, or maybe not. Maybe they'll prove everybody wrong and they'll be better than we think and everything will be fantastic. But the chances of that are probably not very high. But I am here with you going through all the same motions. So check out the show Monday through Friday, wherever you get your podcasts. And also don't forget to subscribe to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube, or check it out on Amazon Fire TV. It'll keep you caught up in everything going on in sports, no matter what time of day it is. So that's a plus. And it's awesome for Locked On, and so many talented hosts will keep you in the loop. So check that out today as well. Nick, as promised, I am curious to see where you think the Red Sox are going to land in terms of their record in 2024. Last year, they were 78-84. I can't imagine they would be worse than that, but that could be optimistic me talking. And, I have asked around some people what they think the Red Sox record might be, and I'm hearing a lot of people saying they think it'll be somewhere around 500. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, look, I mean, I tend to agree with those people, whether it's, 77 wins, 80 wins, somewhere in that area. It's not to say that they can't be better. Again, you catch lightning in the bottle. Nowadays with the wild card situation, if you hover around 85 wins, you get a shot, right? And then if you get in the dance, you get in the dance. But I don't know how you can look at this team and say that they're going to be better or much better than they were a year ago. You're going to need a lot of things. The only way this team wins 85 games or more is if everything goes right for them. I mean, you've got Alex Cora, lame duck manager, final year of his contract. Giolito, I do think, will be, hopefully, fingers crossed, at least more dependable than Chris Sale, because Sale just broke down year after year after year. So, you do hopefully have that dependability with Giolito. I think Pivetta is going to be better than people realize. I've got actually some good optimism about Pivetta. I think Bayo's fine. Again, the day-night thing, figure it out. But I think Bayo's fine overall. You got a hole in the 5th spot. Hopefully one of those two guys can show up. If they get innings, I think their bullpen will be fine. I think their bullpen will be, borderline really freaking good. But the defense is a question. The right-handed power is a question. The injury history of a lot of guys that, or at least a few guys that will mean a lot to this team is kind of hovering over like a dark cloud. So I hope they finish better than I anticipate, but I always look at it this way, Gabby. You talk about FanDuel on this episode a couple times, and I have played FanDuel many a times. Trust me. I always look at it as like, if you're a betting man, right? If you're going to put a house on the line, if you're putting your house on the line, are you putting your house on the line to say that this team is going to make the playoffs? Of course not. So in reality, I think you've got to, aim for 77 to 80 wins, somewhere in that range. And if they end up being better, then hey, great story. And we'll hopefully enjoy that.
Yeah, the way that I've described this Red Sox team a lot is just a lot of things have to go right in order for them to be a championship, talked about team, a team that even could be a playoff contending team. There are a ton of things that they're banking on having to go right. And I've honestly said, I think it's too many things that they're hoping go right in order for that to happen. If everything goes perfectly, I think they could be a very good team. There's definitely talent and potential there, but I just see too many question marks, and not all of those question marks are going to work out. That just is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, what's Abreu with, 400 at-bats? We'll see. I mean, I think people feel pretty good about him at the plate, but we'll see. We'll see if he can sustain what he showed in stretches last year towards the end of the season. So in the O'Neill question, I tend to agree with you. If everybody across the board ends up being the best version of themselves, then you got a team that could make the playoffs. What are the chances of everybody across the board being the best of themselves? Very, very little, slim to none, and maybe Slim walked out the door.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, there's a lot of we'll see. We'll have to wait and see with this team. I think if they were to come and bring in somebody like Jordan Montgomery, like we said before, he's not an ace, but I think he could change the mindsets a little bit of some people about their overall attitudes this offseason, and he certainly would be a sure choice to help fix the rotation. But Nick, it was an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Always enjoy chatting with you and following your content and your show. So for those of you who haven't checked out his show yet, I highly recommend it as well. And I just appreciate you coming on.
Gabby, was great. Again, to talk a little Red Sox. Got off to a slow start, I think. I had to rev the engine up a little bit when I start talking Sox because it's been a while, but I feel like we got there about 6, 7, 8 minutes in. And I was happy about the finished product. So thanks for having me on. Always appreciate visiting you. And like Gabby said, look, she's gonna go through this season, okay? And she's gonna need some help from time to time. She's gonna need some friends, and she's gonna need some people to lean on.
Support system here.
Yes, a support system. So let's build that up for Gabby. But thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. As always, everybody, thank you for tuning into the show. Like I always say, try your best to keep the faith. That's what Red Sox Nation does at the end of the day. Go Red Sox, and I will catch you next time.